All right, we're live. All right, cool. How's everybody doing? Double thumbs up. It wasn't just one thumb up. That's a double thumbs up. Nice. You guys don't mind having your placards out together. It helps me a lot. So with this class, we have four in-person appearances remaining with this class, right? No. Yeah. Hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. Well, because for some reason I was thinking this is the end of the second week. This is the first. So 4 left. It's assuming that the university doesn't change the schedule, which I can't imagine it will, but because of Ducey's executive order, maybe things change. I don't know. I don't imagine it would, but I don't want to speak offhand and say for sure anything. But obviously that just then assumes that everybody kind of goes home for those final 2 weeks and we zoom in for the final topic. Which, I mean, speaking of, the 1-year anniversary of this all going down, we're kind of living the 1-year anniversary now. Like the last NBA game, I want to say it was March 7th. Is that the correct date? And then we hit the lockdown March 17th. So it's cool, I think, that the 1-year anniversary of everything starting, we're also reaching the end. Texas and Arkansas or Mississippi announced yesterday that they're going maskless as of next Wednesday, and that restaurants are open for 100% capacity. Michigan did something similar. There was a 4th state in there as well. Obviously, Ducey's executive order yesterday is forcing schools to open up for in-person classes. I have a friend, I don't know how accurate this is, but I have a friend who teaches in the Phoenix Unit District and said that only 10% of parents so far have said that they'll send students to in-person, but I would have to imagine that number is going to rise significantly. So, I mean, things are changing for, better, changing for the normal, changing for the end, I guess. So we're moving that direction. We've got a couple of things ending this semester, and hopefully this pandemic. Biden said that the government now believes that the nation will have a vaccine available for all adults by May. So in less than 2 months, there won't be any restrictions. And that'll include you guys. There won't be any restrictions on anybody who wants to get a vaccine. There will be a vaccine available to them. We're on pace for herd immunity by June. Herd immunity just basically means that any remaining strains of the virus will just hit too many dead ends and die off. And by that point, anybody who never got sick or never got the vaccine won't have to, because the virus itself will just die organically. So we're on pace. It's all about being on pace. But having vaccines out there certainly helps. So it's kind of cool, kind of weird, kind of surreal, kind of strange, kind of exciting. A lot of emotions going on, right? In regards to that. The expectation is that we'll be back to normal in the fall. We'll be in classrooms without masks and 30 students or 90 students, depending on the size of class. You can go to a basketball game with 17,000 people, go to a football game with 70,000. You can go to a restaurant, go to a bookstore or whatever, and never have to wear masks. I wouldn't mind if everybody who makes my food for the rest of my life wears a mask, but that's just me. Mask and a hairnet. Just, in fact, wear a helmet, full shoulder to head. I don't want anything in my food. But other than that, I've said that I will have a bonfire when the mask mandate ends in Arizona. I'm going to take all my masks and just burn them. And it will be glorious. I'm looking forward to that day. Hopefully it's sooner rather than later. Cool. Almost there. So this is lecture 2 of 4 cultural expression series. We're doing all China this week, and the next week we do Persia, Israel, and I forget the third off the top of my head. I want to say it's India. But hopefully you did watch the first lecture. The first lecture kind of set everything up. It explained what the axial age is, and then it kind of gave us a backstory. This one, now we just go into many of the axial age figures in China, many theologians, so to speak, of that era. So let's jump right in. Do you guys have any questions, comments, starting just about anything before we move forward? No? Cool. So just a little bit of housekeeping. There's a few things going on right now. One, this is somebody reminded me, I was told last period, that was basically just 2 hours ago. There's a Latino club on campus. Do you remember or know who they are? And they're putting this on. Unfortunately, I don't know what this is. The locus the dream continues. There's something going on at the university, at the arena, on March 18th from 6:30 to 8:45. They needed to put more information on this. They didn't, so I have no idea what this is. I just saw the email. It's like there was some sort of Latino club that's putting this on. I wish I could explain more about what it is, but apparently if you QR code this, you'll get the information. Next is some training jobs. A few of these are internships: biomedical internship, business analyst internship, copywriter, technical writer. There's another internship right here, program for national empowerment. So one thing I'll always say is the Grand Canyon does not want you to just have a degree. They want you to get a job with your degree. They want you to go right out of this college and right into a career, making money right off the bat. In order to do that, you gotta have something on your resume to state why you deserve this position over somebody else. And internships are a fantastic way of doing it. So are part-time jobs as well. They're just a fantastic way of having some experience in the fields that you want to enter, and because it looks good for future prospective employers. They recognize, oh, you've got a background, you've got a history of work fired, you led people, you did this, you did that, blah, blah, okay, it just makes you more qualified. So these kinds of things are always very, very important. Just kind of help fill your resume. It looks good to have a degree. GPAs mean something to some people, but job experience, work experience, and internships in particular, that help get your foot into that field that you want to work are very, very important. And to that point, in order for a prospective job to know that you even exist, you've got to have a resume. I say this all the time, and I'm going to continue to say it. So LinkedIn is actually a very good way of having an online digital presence, a positive digital presence, online presence, because LinkedIn is essentially an online digital resume. Well, this guy, Craig Berry, is an account executive of LinkedIn. He's hosting a session to explain, the possibilities through LinkedIn, and I'm sure he'll discuss the importance of how to design a good LinkedIn resume. So you attend virtually for 1 hour, you're going to hear this guy speak, and it helps. The whole objective is just set you up for success as soon as you graduate from college. And I can tell you that LinkedIn works from experience, because I had a job that I was found on LinkedIn, and it is one of the greatest jobs I've ever had. And I was extraordinarily blessed, and it was all because of LinkedIn. Had it not been for LinkedIn, I would have never been found. They headhunted me via the site. So the same thing can happen to you. Just gotta have you gotta have a presence online. So check this guy out. And then further to that point, the one thing I'll always offer is when Grand Canyon offers opportunities for not just internship, but resume writing, I always recommend. I love it. It's called the Belton 101. But the resume and cover letter development seminar, I guess, right here is on the 16th of March from 1 to 2 p.m. 1 hour. That's it. It's all the time. 1 hour. Because just remember that when you apply for a job, the first cuts that are made for a position of the stack of people who apply are those who have poor resumes. HR will literally look at the physical resume, and if it's not attractive, if you didn't put any time or effort into it, if you have any typos, you've got formatting issues, it just shows that you didn't put the time and effort to really pump yourself up, and you don't pay attention to the little things. You don't pay attention to what's the phrase I'm looking for? Shoot, I just had it. Regardless, you didn't put the time and effort to really kind of make it look good. They throw it out. That's the first line. That's the first cut. Is if your resume is not an attractive looking Attention to detail, that's the phrase I'm looking for. If you have errors on it, typos, formatting errors, then it just shows that you don't pay attention to detail. You don't pay that enough attention, and boom, they don't want you. So you've got to have a good looking resume and a good cover letter to get that resume through that first line of cuts. And so just looking at this, I mean, it's 1 hour that you really have to do once in your college career. Because once you have the foundation, once you know how to do it, it's a piece of cake. But right there, the 16th, I'll point out. And then the other one that I'll point out here, and obviously they're all going to be very important opportunities for you, but Internship Workshop. This workshop, getting internship, as I said before, I mean, just having it on your resume, it just looks fantastic. And you get the opportunity to meet people in the field that you want to work. And that truly is more important than anything. It is always more important to know someone in the field that you want to work, less the information to work in that field. So internships are a great way of doing it. March 30th at 11 o'clock. So that is all of them. Any questions, comments, concerns, facial twitches, or the one from that? These are real important, guys, and that's why I say them to you. If it wasn't important, I wouldn't spend any time on this. But it's a big deal to have a good resume. It's a big deal to have internships. It's a big deal to have jobs to build your resume. And the fact that Grand Canyon offers you all these opportunities, I think is fantastic. I was never offered it. I had to build it all on my own. I'd ask my aunt to help me design a resume, and then I lost it, and I had to do another one a couple years later. So the fact that Grand Canyon is giving you guys these things, please take advantage just once. That's really the only thing, especially when it comes to resumes. You just need to take advantage once. You never have to do it again. All right, so this is on an automatic timer, so before I even get a chance to explain it, this is going to move. So if they were to look at many of the Axial Age thinkers in China, as well as some of the particular thoughts of kind of organizational government and society. So it's just 8 of them. They start up kind of big. Confucius is by far the heaviest one, and by the time we get to the end, it's only like one slide. So as we get through, it starts out just, we're discussing Confucianism for a little bit, and then it speeds up. So we're talking about 8 topics. We'll get through this, and then it'll be the Axial Age of China. So it's interesting that with Confucius, we don't actually have anything firsthand from him in terms of writing. Everything we have from him comes from a series of analects, which are, as you can see here, this is one of them, philosophical extracts. These are things that Confucius said, but we don't have anything firsthand from him. These were written by his disciples years after he died, in some cases, many years after. But it's just really cool, though, that we still at least have, and he came 500 years before Christ, that we still have, 2,700 years later, at least some sort of verbal record of Confucius's life and Confucius's sayings and his perspectives and so forth. So, who was Confucius? I'll keep this short for those who didn't watch the lecture on Tuesday. Confucius, or Kongji, which means Master Kong, represented himself as a transmitter of spirituality who invented nothing. In other words, he wasn't this philosopher that was necessarily like many of the Enlightenment thinkers who believed that their intellect was guiding their thought. He believed that, in essence, heaven was speaking through him and using him as kind of an outlet for what heaven wanted. For many Christians, we obviously Christianity believes in the Holy Spirit. And for many Christians, they believe that the Holy Spirit can speak through them, that you can ask the Holy Spirit, let your words be what I speak. Let your actions be how I act. Confucius was kind of saying the same thing. He was claiming that, heaven was speaking for him, that he was not designing this philosophy himself. A hallmark of his teaching was on his emphasis on education and study. We'll get a little to that here soon, a little more of that. And he wanted his disciples to think for themselves and study the world. So while he was stating to them, this is the world, he was then asking them to use his philosophy for them to grow. Which is a little bit different from Christianity. It's certainly Catholicism. the way it's generally set up is not personal interpretation, which is different from many Protestant denominations. But at least originally too, it was not a religious set up. Christianity was not set up for individual interpretation. It was, no, do as Christ did, do as Christ said. And so that is a departure from what Confucius said. It was, take my words and grow from them. Interpret the world as you must. So the most reliable information, as I said, that we have on Confucius comes from those analects, which are a collection of sayings, conversations, and anecdotes compiled posthumously being after his death by his disciples, some of them long after his death. He was a teacher of history. He was a public official. In his final 12 years, he wandered the states of China, of which there were 7, with a few disciples. He was a traditionalist, which can kind of, especially in the modern context, be noted as a conservative. In a time of division, chaos, and endless wars between feudal states, again, which this was the Warring States period, which, if you did not watch the Tuesday lecture, was a 150-year civil war between the 7 states. Take that into context. The American Civil War was just over 4 years. The Chinese Civil War, well, they've had more than one, but the Warring States period was 150 years long. People literally were born into war. It was an extraordinarily difficult time for everybody involved. And unlike the American Civil War, where the idea was not the destruction of the opposition, the United States, Lincoln and the Union did not want to destroy the Confederacy. They wanted to bring them home. The Confederacy did not want to destroy the Union. They wanted their independence. The goal of the 7 states during the Warring States period was the destruction of the other 6 states. And when all 7 states have that perspective of the destruction of the other 6, it is an extraordinarily difficult, violent time period. And so, of course, you're going to have people that grow up in this era that are going to try to design, discover ways of getting out of it, finding peace. So in this time of division, chaos, and endless war between these feudal states, Confucius wanted to restore the mandate of heaven. He respected authority and believed that a humane society depends on respect for one's superiors. He was interested in politics for its ability to work for the good of the realm and the well-being of all citizens. And he believed that China's problems could be resolved by a return to the traditions of the legendary sage kings of old, and specifically to the idea that if a leader is virtuous, the people will follow his example. That's a tremendous idea. That is certainly the foundation of Christianity. That is to follow Christ's, not just message, not just his words, but his actions as well. It is to act as the king acted. And that was his perspective, was that if the king is, the king is virtuous, if the king is peaceful, if the king seeks out righteousness and equality and fairness, and justice, then the people will follow suit. Confucius drew together many of the features of traditional Chinese beliefs and gave them a particular focus. Confucianism was concerned with how people related to one another in this life. He taught that each person in society had a class in which they belonged, and partly as a result of this, the structure of Chinese society would not, in many ways, has not changed in literally nearly 3,000 years. Remember, with the Indian classical castes, that those people were born into one of those 5 very specific castes, and if you were once in a particular caste, you could then be placed into a secondary subcaste called a jati. This is very similar in Confucian and Chinese structure of society. That is, and there is a designated order of society. However, it was almost generally gender-based. This was the case in India as well as it was the case in medieval Europe. But in China, it was very much a Confucian order, very much gender-based. So Confucius professed that there were 5 principal relationships in society, again, gender-based primarily. Ruler to subject, father to son, older brother to younger brother, husband to wife, senior friend to junior friend. Now notice though, in this image, the size of those boxes, of course, the ruler to the subject, the power, the authority, the superiority over the subject is going to be huge. Hence, the ruler's box, the representation of this relationship, is much greater than the subject. Move down, and of course, a father's relationship superiority is going to be greater than that over the son, except notice though that it is to a slightly lesser scale. Older brother to younger brother, similar situation, but to a lesser scale. Husband and wife, again, lesser scale, and then finally to senior friend and junior friend. So what this then further represents is the ability for compromise, essentially. And that is that a subject is not going to be able to compromise with this rule. It is the ruler's desire that is to, come to pass. A son has a slightly better chance at affecting the decision-making process and the outcome in a relationship with the father, as the younger brother to his older brother. And of course, as a wife to a husband. You can notice the boxes aren't, well, obviously the husband box is larger. It is much, much smaller than in comparison to the other relationships. In that, there is greater equality in that perspective between the wife and the husband. The wife has a greater opportunity based on the relationship alone for helping guide the decision-making of the husband. But in the end, what makes the husband's box larger is the fact that he holds that final decision-making process. She might have influenced him, but the final decision was his alone. And of course, senior friend to junior friend, you can notice that the senior box is slightly bigger. It is not equal. But that means that a junior friend, the lesser friend, if you will, the younger or what have you, has greater sway over the decision-making process of the senior friend, but still the senior friend holds the final say. So his ideas, that is Confucius, were not founded on religion or a vision of the divine, but on his perspective of human potential. You got to give Confucius a lot of credit on that perspective right there. So it was the idea that he saw that mankind was capable of greater than what it was accomplishing in that moment. Again, 150-year civil war, and then China, looking around, it ain't accomplishing a whole lot, right? But he still recognized that for mankind in general, there was more there. From a pop culture reference, Superman uses this, and especially the original movie, 1979, uses this kind of phrase, or this perspective. Jor-El, which is the biological father of Superman, tells Superman that mankind desires better, but they lack the light to show the way. And so Jor-El tells Clark Kent, tells Superman, you can be that light. You can be that guiding light. They want to emulate someone greater than them. Jesus obviously does this, and actually Superman is very analogous to Christ, and intentionally so in many cases. But again, in that pop culture sense, what Confucius is saying in regards to leadership, that if a leader is virtuous, the people follow the same. In pop culture with Superman, that is literally the theme. The idea was that here is this God-man, invincible to basically everything on Earth that can throw at him. Doesn't really age, can come back to life, kind of like Christ in one storyline. Can fly, super strength, carry things, yada, yada, yada. And the idea with that is that he has these godlike powers, but he doesn't lord them over anybody. He uses them sacrificially. He is giving himself, that is Superman, he's giving himself to mankind. He wants to defend mankind. He wants to save mankind. He wants to use these powers as a virtue to save the world. Well, this is precisely what Confucius is saying here and here. That if we live in a virtuous way, and if our leadership represents us in a virtuous way, it is the guide to the greatest within us, that of the greatest levels of human potential. So Ren, or the essence of being human, was achieved through self-cultivation. It was central to his teaching. He focused on the development of one's character, the individual. He saw moral improvement as part of our very humanity, manifested in the way we express and fulfill our deepest natures. This involved following a version of the golden rule. Quote, by understanding our own wishes, thinking internally first, we may image or imagine what others desire. And of course, the golden rule is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So what does this mean? What does this mean? By understanding our own wishes, we may imagine what others desire and do unto others as you would have them do unto you. What does that mean? Should I pull a popsicle stick? Erica says no, but I got to do it if I don't have the responses.
I guess it's kind of similar to like treat others as like you want to be treated.
Yeah. So it's treat others the way you want to be treated.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's essentially certainly that's the do unto others. The Confucian idea of understanding our own wishes will allow us to imagine what others wish for themselves is very similar, only it is, in essence, it's kind of the exact opposite way of getting to the same end.
Yeah.
And so obviously the same end, the end that both seek is equality and peace, or peace through equality, I suppose. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Treat people the way you want to be treated. The big difference though is that the do unto others aspect is selfless. It isn't think about what you want, it's think about what others want. And if everybody thinks about what others want, then everybody will be treated kindly, fairly, lovingly. What Confucius says is actually looking inward. It's almost a little more selfish, excuse me. And that is just, recognize how you want to be treated and then treat others that way. So it requires us to, again, take kind of a selfish perspective to it, whereas the Christian view is more of a selfless. It's an external kind of seeking of peace. So even manners, which can be superficial. I think about it, if you just don't want to, give somebody something, it's like, yeah, I gave it to you. Sure, you kind of helped them, but it was superficial. You're doing it because you had to. Or you're only doing it to be noticed. That's actually the key. I'm going to hold the door for her just so I can be noticed. I mean, that is superficial. You're seeking out Christ. That was something that Christ regularly pounded on the Jewish leadership of his era, because they constantly did things to be noticed, didn't they? And he constantly said, don't pray in the streets. They're only looking for attention. If you fast, make sure that you wash yourself and dress nicely. The people who the Jews did that fast and look ragged and tired, they're only doing it for attention. It's all very superficial. So Confucius is saying is even manners of practice with the proper disposition have the potential to make us more human. Just the simplest thing, right? Manners is literally the simplest thing for referencing. Belief now became a way to transform a person, and in particular, any person, not just the elite. Confucius channeled what had previously been a kind of magical thinking, something that was above and beyond what anybody could attain, and turned it into something transcendent, available to all humanity, regardless of their level in society, regardless of their placement in society. His disciples, of course, found this path quite difficult, and saw striving for this goodness and life as a lifelong process that might not even be attainable. Unlike Buddha, though, Confucius had no goal of liberation. or the ending of samsara. His disciples aspired to goodness or ren in their lifetime for its own sake. So, in other words, they didn't have the carrot and the stick of eternal life the way Christians do, and Jews do, and even Muslims, where it's the idea of if you act a certain way, you're gifted something eternally. What Confucius said and what his disciples followed and believed was that you do it not for the sake of something, you do it because it's right. You act this way, you treat others in a profoundly positive way because it's the right and good thing to do. So Confucius believed that, and Christians do the same thing. We're supposed to do the same thing. We're supposed to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. But then we're gifted eternal life as a result of fulfilling those Christian desires. Confucius believed that through the cultivation of ren, people could achieve social harmony in this life, and that this would have a salutary or positive effect throughout society. So, how did Confucius's philosophies align with Jesus's? There are definitely some corollaries there. And I'll show this very quick anecdote. I've mentioned I'm Catholic. When I was in junior college, so I was I did junior college for 4 years, because after 2 years I changed my degree and got like a second associate's. So I was there from like 18 to 22. There was a Catholic priest there, because it was a Catholic, I guess it was a church on campus. It was at GCC, Glenville Community College, which isn't too far from here. And he would sit out 2 or 3 days a week outside of the student union with a group of other Catholics. There was a club on campus. And had a big kind of fold-out card table. This guy was, by the way, just like the most chill priest you could ever meet. I mean, like he was such a hippie. He was great fun to talk to because he was so laid back. So he had this table, this card table, and just sit out and just talk to anyone who wanted to talk. That's all he wanted. He was gonna represent Catholicism by just conversation. And he had on his card table all his pamphlets. And they were all pamphlets to discuss, different aspects of Catholicism, whether it was the church, the Eucharist, the history, yada, yada, yada. It was just informational. It was all they wanted to do. It was just on campus to kind of teach from his table. But he had one section of pamphlets on Confucianism and Buddhism, because he said, he's like, well, hey, for whatever reason, I can't convince you to become Christian, convince you to become Catholic. We can't convert you. He's like, you have to at least read these, at least recognize the goodness that mankind can, attain, can reach, and at least kind of move in that direction. If you can't do Christianity, he's like, there's still something that's, while it's not close, it's at least on the right path. And I always found that fascinating. And so when you read this, about Confucianism, there's definitely some similarities in the desire for peace and how to attain it. There are some differences, like I said, the selflessness of Christ versus the kind of selfish inner recognition of self in Confucianism, but still. So, cool, we got a couple thumbs up. There we go. So social distance talking neighbors. How do Confucius' philosophies align with Jesus's? Ready, set, go.
How like equality, someone that's like both of them has like this absence of violence. Like your most religions, absence of violence. But these two do it in very similar way. Like, treating others even though they're like reversed, but it's like the similar concept. So, but the absence of yeah.
Oh, right. It's funny. I can only see your eyes and just see so many tired eyes. And I feel like you guys, just as a whole, look more tired than normal. Justin's just, I don't even know if you've heard a word. I just swear he's like. All right, so before I pick a stick, does anyone want to volunteer? Any comparisons? Justin.
They both teach you to treat others how you want to be treated.
Yeah, so I mean, they both, so yes, it's treat others the way you want to be treated. Essentially, again, as I said, the end game is the same, right? The end game is peace. The end game is equality. The end game is fairness, because if you treat others with peacefulness and equality and fairness, and all people do, you'll be treated with peacefulness and equality and fairness. And again, I'm kind of nitpicking because the end game for both Christ and Confucius was obviously the same, but the difference being that Christ said, forget the selfish aspect, you must be selfless. Look to others first before yourself. And if all people look to others, then all people will be treated that way. Whereas Confucius was saying, well, contemplate how you want to be treated and then treat others and the way you want to be treated. And if all people treat others the way they want to be treated, So again, it is nitpicking, but there is a difference, I would have to surmise. Who else? Let's make sure we have our cell phones for a minute. Jack, what did you guys have?
We basically kind of talked about the same thing that he said about like they both have, even though it's reversed, like Jesus is like selfless, so Confucianism is like selfish. Like it's still.
Well, again, I don't want to throw Confucius completely in the bus. I'm just saying from that perspective, I mean, the phrasing of think about yourself first. That's kind of like the first act is to kind of look within, if you will, and that's kind of inherently selfish, is all I'm saying. Yeah. All of Confucianism is not selfish. I mean, it was a very selfless philosophy.
Yeah, I'm not marking it down.
Sure.
I'm just saying that the wording is different.
Yeah.
But it's still the end goal. I think another is like obviously the end goal is peace, like how to attain it and make sure they have like different paths to achieve it. Like it's still like, hey, when you die, you have like this satisfaction of what you did.
Not Confucianism. Oh, the satisfaction.
The satisfaction
gotcha. Oh,
that you have done right.
Gotcha.
Not like afterlife.
Gotcha.
Like,
I'm sorry.
I meant like when you die, you're like, oh, I did well.
Yeah. Or again, in those moments leading up to death. Yes. Gotcha. Totally. Noah, what do you guys think?
I was just thinking about, because we kind of talk about the same things. I was just thinking about this whenever I talk to my different. But it'd be like, this sounds really general, but they're both value based, where it's like if everybody was to stay true to like these like values that we think are important, kind of, then we could lose like the potential of like everything being, everybody being like good to each other, like peace and that kind of thing. That's kind of like.
So your comparison is the values-based aspect of it.
Yeah, that like there's these core values that everybody kind of get on board with them, I guess.
Yeah.
a better place.
Yeah, well, okay, so you just made a fantastic point. I mean, if you think about it, all war, all bigotry, all hatred, probably all anger could end right now if all people followed one of those two rules. If you are going to like kind of more selfishly look inward, first, fun, because the end game again is supposed to be the same, the end outcome people. But literally, right now, 100%, all human angst could end in an instant. There wouldn't be a transition period. There wouldn't be the slow burn. It would be now. If everybody said, I will treat people the way I want to be treated. Fairly, kindly, lovingly, respectfully, peacefully, so on and so forth. That's it. I mean, it would end right there. So the key is, since it can't, because we can't force that, there's no way to set a timer, there's no way to set a clock, there's no way to bring everything. The key is for it to just start with us. You know, if we do it, then those who don't prescribe to our new, peaceful, equitable, fair way of life, they eventually will desire the same happiness and peacefulness that we have. And they'll ask us, how do we get it? You know, and fortunately, we don't have to go through Confucius, we can go through Christ, who's obviously just a hair more powerful. Obviously, I'm being facetious there. But the point, though, is then at that point, we can then on us start converting. But regardless, literally, and to your point, if the values of the world were that of, let's see if it'll work. That's not, oh. Come on. If the values of the world were that of this, right here, be open. In fact, at that moment, the skies might open up and the angels might start playing their trumpets, and God could come down on that white horse and go, "Hey, you did it! It's over. You won the game," or whatever. But I mean, literally, I mean that's it. That's the end game. You know, again, well, that's the process to the end game. I think you're right on. Anybody else? Beautiful. Oh, all right. So Confucius, though, did speak to a superiority of some over others. Let's talk about that. All right. So Confucius, again, I mean, set up the society, Confucianism organized the society that China really did follow pretty heavily for thousands of years. We'll go back to this. But then, in particular, he recognized and taught a level of superiority over one versus another based on their treatment. So let's look at these. This is group, compare up. This does not have to be individual silent work. So here are just 6 scenarios, or 5. 6 scenarios. There are 6 scenarios with a few people. You are to decide who is superior in the Confucian mind. So according to Confucius, one of the persons below is either or is superior to the other. Choose who conforms to the Confucian ethic and try to explain the reasoning. Now I'll give you 3 lines, so try to explain the reasoning in a sentence. You know, we're not looking for a lot here. But go ahead, work with neighbors to answer these, read them through, and the answer those will take about 10 minutes. Shouldn't be much more than that. And we'll bring it back and discuss it. How does it go? For you all guys online, give me a second. I will upload a document. It's not this exact thing, but it's the exact scenarios on the announcements here, like right now. And you can just look over it so you can see the scenarios, but you don't have to write anything, send anything. Participation is obviously just notes with the the what say yous. Just make sure it's both of those. But then this, you can just like read through it, just look over and see what they're looking at. So just give me a second. I'll give you a thumbs up, or I'll come over and tell you, but I'm going to put it up on LoudCloud right now. For those of you who are watching live. Okay, so it's up on announcements. It's just a Word doc. Again, you don't have to write anything. You don't have to say anything yet. Just, look it over and we'll discuss it all here right now. three, group work, for sure, it's not one on top. At least for having the opportunity. Everybody ready? Everybody need a few more moments? We're good? Okay, cool. Sweet. So, all right, so who is superior to the other? Let's start with the first scenario. So, number one, Jane chooses to associate only with students who listen to alternative music and speak and act like she does. She has no interest in getting to know those who are different from her. Cindy never judges people on the basis of their looks or how they act. She is always eager to meet and speak to new people. Taylor, what did you guys say? Who is superior?
You said Cindy because she's constantly gaining knowledge in the social aspects of other people and then closing off from them.
What was the first part? You said she gains knowledge in social aspects of other people. What was the first part that you said though? She mostly? Is that what you said?
So she like constantly.
Oh, constantly. That was the word I couldn't hear. Okay, yes. She constantly just gaining knowledge of the social aspects of other people. She's by not closing off on the people. Is that what you said? Yeah, very good. Matthew? You here? Yeah, do you agree? What did you guys say?
I agree that Cindy represented the ethics of Confucius, but wouldn't Jane be superior because she's the teacher?
Because she's the teacher?
Well, it says Jane chooses to associate only with students.
Oh gosh, I never thought of that as teacher. I always just thought of that as
But that
peers.
is like a peer thing.
Yeah.
If it was teacher, that's what I was thinking. But yeah, then Sydney. I
Okay.
agree with all that.
Okay, cool.
I thought they were both teachers. Like I looked at it as like
It's funny. I've never thought of these people as teachers. When I read students, I always read that, and it's never been brought up by me either, as being students as in like just representing their age, their peers, essentially. What do you say then, though? If they're both teachers, does that change anything?
well, if they're both teachers, then obviously it's Cindy because she values others as equals. Like if she has.
But does that change anything if they're both students, or does that change anything?
Well, if they're both on an equal playing field, then it does. But if they're not, like if Jane is the teacher and Cindy is just a regular student, then Jane is the superior because she's the higher rank.
Because she's the higher ranking. Yeah, I see that. Yeah, so I don't think it's intended for the that social ranking. I think it is the superiority of the ethics.
Yeah.
I've never read that as. You know what? I can double check. Give me 1 second. I've never read that as they were both teachers. I can pull it quite quickly. Let's see.
I just associate that because the way it's worded.
Yeah, well, again, you guys are making a fair point. The fact that you're seeing that direction, I've never thought of it that way. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, okay, so what I have here are quotes from Confucius, and I guess it disregards their social position, because it says, Confucius said, quote, "The superior man is impartial and not biased. The petty man is prejudiced." So to that point, it doesn't matter about the superiority. What it is, it's strictly talking about the ethics. Okay. So which means that Cindy is the superior.
Cindy is the superior.
Yeah. All right, number 2, Larry reads and studies all the time, but he rarely thinks about what he has read. Joe is always thinking, but he never reads and studies. Sounds like a college student. Jamal reads and studies and always allows himself substantial time to think about what he has learned and how it affects his life as well as others. Jake, what do you guys say? Jake, not here. Justin.
This is Jamal. He's trying to prove himself with all manners. He's not just trying to be able to say, "Oh, he read it," or he's not just trying to say, "Oh, I already know." He's actually trying to put it in order.
Actually, that's a very good point. Where it's by saying, "Oh, I already know." It's something I teach Benjamin. He goes, "Oh, I know." It's like, well, but do you? But it's just like don't tell me what to do. I know, kind of thing. So that's a very good, I think, a very good perspective to put. It's not just, "Oh, I'm always thinking." It's, "Oh, I already know." Very good. Both Rita and her friend Jessica disagreed with their teacher's viewpoint, but when voicing their opinion, both of them were rude and disrespectful. When asked to apologize, both girls refused on the grounds that they had a right to their opinion. Later, Rita realized that she was wrong to have been disrespectful. People can disagree and still be cordial. So she apologized to the teacher for her disrespectful conduct. Jessica, however, still believed she was right and refused to apologize. So, Faith, what did you guys say?
Rita chose to respect the authority, so she was following.
Where, excuse me, say one more time.
Oh, Rita ended up choosing to like ultimately respect authority.
So Rita, Jack, what do you guys say? Do you agree?
I agree with that. I also say Rita. Not because of the authority thing. I think it's because she was disrespectful and she knew that it was wrong. Because if someone disrespected her, obviously she would be hurt.
Sure.
So it's like, the similar thing where it's like treat others like you treated.
Sure. Yeah. Very good, both of you. Thank you, Faith. Thank you, Jack. James and Frank both saw an elderly woman drop her wallet getting off of a bus. When they looked inside, they found $100 in cash and credit cards. James wanted to return the bag to the woman, but Frank wished to keep the money. Eventually, James succeeded in convincing his friend to return the wallet, but it was at the expense of their relationship. Who is superior, Dara?
Thanks, because he decided to be the better person and decided to make the decision to return the money. So he chose the good thing over the bad friendship.
Oh, again, very good point. So that friendship was obviously toxic. If the other friend, if Frank was willing to steal the money, then obviously that relationship was a toxic one, was it not? And at that point, if Frank's willing to steal the money, how can you trust Frank that he's not going to steal from you? You think? Very good. Catherine and David competed for the valedictorian of their high school in a debate. When asked the same question, David made up a story pretending to know the answer. Catherine simply told the audience she did not know. Simon, are you here? Okay, perfect. What did you guys say?
One of the Catherine superior is she was honest in the face of potential reward about
Sure, very good. Yeah, so, it's funny. If Catherine and David are representative of American society, which one are we, Catherine or David? And actually, I meant to ask you, obviously, I'm assuming everybody's going to say David because we know better. But I forgot I was going to ask us in regards to Jessica and Rita, which one are we? Certainly, which one are politicians in particular? Do politicians apologize ever or not? And then finally, Soraya and Natasha were best friends. Every day, both Soraya and Natasha's family ate dinner at the same time and expected both girls to be there on time. Both girls made the high school cheerleading squad, but Natasha quit because she could no longer eat dinner with her family. Soraya insisted dinner with her family was less important than cheerleading. Emma, who is more superior? Natasha, because she made the sacrifice of her selfish desire of cheerleading so that she could cultivate a relationship with her family. Very good. So nobody disagree with that. So in the last class, I brought up the point, I wondered, is it possible to look at Soraya's parents as being less superior from the perspective of they were not selfless enough to sacrifice their dinner time with Soraya by letting her go to cheerleading. Does that make sense? So Soraya was selfish, if you will, in saying dinner with my family is less important than cheerleading. But is her parents maybe a little selfish by not letting her do something that she obviously wanted to do and was good enough to be able to make the team do it? So what might have been the most selfless situation in that scenario? With Soraya in particular, Faith?
Her parents could have changed the time to eat dinner and let her do cheerleading and stuff like that.
That's a good point. But let's say, for the sake of argument, dinner and cheerleading is 5 o'clock. What's a way for that to have been a fully selfless and selfless scenario in which Soraya gets to cheer. Selfless by all parties involved. The parents become cheerleaders. We just can't break away from you. We must be with you at this time every day, so we'll cheerlead with you. That would be funny. That's a good scenario. That should be a movie. Disney movie. No, I would think the least selfish and most selfless scenario would have been Soraya telling her parents she will give up cheerleading to spend dinner with them, and then her parents sacrificing their time with her by encouraging her to continue this to cheerlead. Because then at that point, Soraya offers up her time, offers up her cheerleading time as a sacrifice for time with her family. And then her family offers up the sacrifice of her time in dinner with them to allow her to go cheerlead. Does that make sense? I think that would have been the most universally selfless event. But Soraya would have had to have been the first to make that move. If Soraya says, oh, dinner's not important, or dinner's less important, I must cheerlead, and her parents relent, she was still selfish by demanding that she gets to participate in the activity that she wants to participate in at the expense of her family. But if she goes to her family and says, I'm willing to sacrifice what I want for my family, then her that was selfless, then her family can equally as selflessly then say, no, we are willing to sacrifice our time together so you can go participate in the sport on your own that you obviously love and desire participating in. I think that would have been all very Confucianist and certainly Christian. So go ahead and keep these. You don't turn these in. We're not done. We're going to move on. But this can help you with the assignment to discuss Confucius. I'm trying to roll. So next is Tao. And like I said, Confucius was by far the longest topic we discussed. It now starts to move a lot quicker. So Tao, or Taoism, is based on the writings of Lao Tzu, or Lao Tzu, or Lao Tzu. Taoism was the second most influential philosophy to emerge in China at this time, behind only Confucianism. But like Confucianism, philosophical Taoism developed as a response to the same political, social, and economic pressures. That, again, remember, the warring states period. 7 states out in war for destruction over the other 6. Obviously, you get all 7 or at war with one another. And the Civil War lasted 150 years. Primarily concerned with the 2 classic texts, the Tao Te Ching and the Chuan Ji, and provided a comprehensive view of the world, including the Sacred Ultimate, which was really kind of like their social Bible, if you will, the Sacred Ultimate. So Tao, or the way, is what the discussion. The axial concept of Tao is found in all forms of Chinese philosophy, usually translated as way or path. So Tao is translated either way or path. To Confucius, the Tao meant avoiding excesses, applying conscious self-restraint, and self-awareness in word, deed. So right now, for Catholics, we're in the season of Lent, which is the leading up to Easter. And so what it is for Catholics, it's a representation of kind of living through the 40 days of Christ's solo travels through the desert, where he had no food, he had no water. He was basically sacrificing kind of all of those for kind of the betterment of himself and mankind. So the practicing by Catholics of that, giving sacrifices of 40 days, began during the Middle Ages and is now continued to this day. It is very much the idea of avoiding excesses as well as applying conscious self-restraint and self-awareness. So what you do is just to give up something or multiple things or add something to your daily regimen that is sacrificial, that is difficult. And the idea is that it teaches you self-restraint and self-awareness. The way a Catholic priest that I just read this quote a few weeks ago put it was essentially a basketball team does not enter a game without practicing. They're obviously going to practice. And so the idea of Lent for Catholics is to practice self-restraint. It is a time where you do it in dedication to Christ, in memoriam of Christ, and walking through his footsteps in your attempt to and desire to be more Christ-like. You sacrifice something for those 40 days. You practice that self-restraint for those 40 days, which then leads into the rest of the year. The rest of the year then is in essence that basketball game in which you now have, it gives you the opportunity to practice self-restraint and self-sacrifice, and not just practice, but then live it more freely, more willingly, more openly. So that's from the Catholic Lenten perspective. This is then what Tao represents, as what Confucius saw Tao as meaning. But for them, following the way was participating in the Tao of nature, the changes, breadth of the universe, the mystery, intuition, and enigma of the natural world. The central theme of the concept is the concept of nothingness, which is used to describe the Tao with N3 of the concepts that are virtue or day, natural behavior, Jiran, and non-action, Wu Wei. The Tao Te Ching refers to the Tao as the mother of the universe, the source of all things, the way of nature. And from a pop culture perspective, that is the force. This is essentially what the force is based on. It's this idea. The force lives in all things. It is essentially the kind of the giver of life. It's what passes through, and flows through all things. It is the way of nature in the universe, so on and so forth. And then the midichlorians in Star Wars are the things that kind of work with the force with the universe. So the Tao is the named and the nameless. Thus, it is all things. It is primordial. It is stable. It is constant, eternal, and ineffable. Yet it is the source of change and the cycle of life. Human understanding is limited, and there are some aspects of the Tao that cannot be spoken, but it can all be learned through the Tao. Lao Tzu, or the Old Master, lived in the 4th century BC during the 100 Schools of Thought era. This was the era that succeeded the Warring States period, in which philosophy and it was essentially the Chinese version of the Enlightenment. He is traditionally, Lao Tzu is traditionally believed to have been a record keeper in the Zhao dynasty court. Lao Tzu describes the Tao as a source of all existence, again, kind of like the force. The main focus is to lead human beings back to their natural way of life in harmony with the Tao. Humans have no special place within the Tao. They are seen as having desires and free will, and are instructed to act in accordance with nature and in harmony with the Tao. Interestingly, the Tao Te Ching, this book, uses paradox, analogy, and ancient sayings to convey its message. So let's look at those. This is the Tao Te Ching. If you understand others, you are smart. If you understand yourself, you are illuminated. If you overcome others, you are powerful. If you overcome yourself, you have strength. If you know how to be satisfied, you are rich. If you can act with vigor, you have a will. If you don't lose your objectives, you can be long-lasting. If you die without loss, you are eternal. A leader is best when people barely know he exists. Of a good leader who talks little, when his work is done, his aim fulfilled, they will say, "We did this ourselves." When was the last time a politician ever did that? Didn't take credit. The wise man is one who knows what he does not know. Simplicity patience, compassion. These three are your greatest treasures. Simple in action and thoughts, you return to the source of being. Patient with both friends and enemies, you accord with the way things are. Compassionate towards yourself, you reconcile all beings in the world. Those who know do not speak. Those who speak do not know. When you are content to be simply yourself and don't compare or compete, everyone will respect you. A man with outward courage dares to die. A man with inner courage dares to live. The flame that burns twice as bright burns half as long. Basically, many rock stars throughout history. Finally, to understand the limitation of things, desire them. Give evil nothing to oppose, it will disappear by itself. All streams flow to the sea because it is lower than they are. Humility gives it its power. If you want to govern the people, you must place yourself below them. If you want to lead the people, you must learn how to follow them. If you realize that all things change, there is nothing you will try to hold on to. If you are not afraid of dying, there is nothing you cannot achieve. When people see some things as beautiful, other things become ugly. When people see some things as good, other things become bad. When there is no desire, all things are at peace. Let's have a little fun. Can you come up with words of wisdom that can be associated with those of Taoism? To make this a little bit easier, because it's a very broad statement, let's try to focus on school, make it educational based. Try to think of school on some level and come up with something that can be associated with Taoism and how these are obviously phrased and worded. Social distance, talk to neighbors. I guess I feel.
Oh, yeah, I got something. Nothing is pointless as long as you get meaning. Understand. Understand how it works.
So notice how I shine it on the wall. When I shine it outside, though, I don't think it's bright enough. I don't know if it makes it through the glass and onto the building across.
I see it.
Do you seriously see it?
No, I see it on the glass.
Okay, so what I'm wondering is like the direction I'm facing, though. I never see it outside, so I don't think it can make it across. Yeah.
I mean, light has mass. I can use like distance.
Oh, I know. That's what I'm saying. I don't think it. Huh? Oh, it did? You go blind? Are you going to sue Logitech? It's their laser. I just hit the button.
We'll sue AZ Sports History.
And you'll get nothing out of it. All right. Anybody come up with anything I want to volunteer? Oh, just one.
All right. If you understand everything, you will learn nothing. If you understand nothing, you can learn everything.
Okay. I mean, you kind of paraphrased. No offense. You kind of paraphrased.
Did I?
Yeah. But it's still. It's if you think you understand everything, you will learn nothing. If you know that you know nothing, you can learn everything. I would say that. It's still a paraphrase, but it's. I think it's.
Probably why I came to mind so quick.
Yeah, possibly subliminal. Yeah.
This might not be like totally accurate to Taoism, but what I came up with is everything is pointless until you give it meaning.
No, I think it's a good thing. Yeah, I think I could be contributing to Taoist presentation of philosophy for sure. Somebody in the last class said that of a Taoist philosophy on education, C's get degrees. I was like, well. I thought it was funny, but I'm like,
That's used everywhere. Everyone says that.
oh, I know, that's the point. That was the joke. Anybody else come up with? Erica, I feel like that smile, I can see it. You guys had something.
I said it, but I was like, ooh, I don't know if you want it because, you know, you're a professor. I was like, in order to do well in your assignments, you must take class. Because, you know, like, extra time, you know, you do better than your assignments.
Well, yeah, it's not going to offend me.
Yeah.
You pay for this class, so if you need to skip class, and that's on you, you just, I get you. Okay, so in order to do well on assignments, you have to skip class. I don't know if I agree with it, but I'll take it. Anybody else? Nobody? Ugh. All right. Good, we got a couple good ones. Or 3 good ones. Is it just me or is anybody else craving Pizza Hut crust and breadsticks right now? Just me.
I'm getting these after class from Pizza Hut.
I'm so jealous. My wife has celiac, so we don't eat gluten. You know, like, trust me, I get gluten when I want it, but like, there's none in the house. Pizza Hut, Domino's, Little Caesars, Papa John's, I miss all of those so much.
Was there a Domino's like down the street?
Yeah.
It could be, but she can't eat it, so I can't like bring it home.
You need snacks?
A little
Slice.
snack. Oh, don't tempt me, bro.
Go on 35th.
Yeah, but the Pizza Hut crust and those breadsticks are just the greatest things in the world.
Isn't it on 33rd? Like before you go on 35th, you just go straight and there's like Pizza Hut like right there.
There could be, I don't know. I don't go to anymore.
You should just let them out early and go get it.
Or you guys can just bring it to me. Buy your grades.
Remember she said we have to skip class to do good in some assignments. So if you let us just skip the rest by doing pizza, we'll do good.
Why don't you skip the previous class, bring the pizza here? This is dinner time.
And we won't have to wear masks in class either.
Well, actually, technically, you're not supposed to eat in class because of the mask thing. All right. So, motion. The Shi were the lower aristocracy. Many were specialists in administration as well as scribes. So I mean, imagine that this was a time in history in which just knowing how to read and write was placed you at a higher, plane of human organization. But something was before they left.
Yep.
And in particular, if you were a scribe, that was a government position where the scribes basically just kind of copied documents or took down information from the ruling class. But it just, again, that was a scenario in history, or excuse me, a time period in history in which being literate could potentially get you a high-level government-ranking position. So the Chinese classics, the series of classic philosophical books, were compiled and recorded by this class of minor nobility. Some of this minor nobility had formerly fought wars with chariot units until this style of warfare became outmoded, meaning that it was no longer militarily efficient and necessary. Many Shi became unemployed at this time of social change and sought work in the new power centers. Increasingly, rulers sought the advice of military experts among the Shi. Among them was a man named Moji, the founder of Moism. His version of the Golden Rule is even more selfish than the last, and that is, others must be regarded as the self. Moji preached active nonviolence, which is very MLK-like. Remember, MLK practiced and preached active nonviolence. That's your sit-ins, your boycotts, those kinds of things. And he was asked, why not be more aggressive? And one of the reasons was, do I have it on the slide? I don't think so. One of the reasons, though, was, that's what it was. That's what I was going to go back to. One of the reasons was this: give evil nothing to oppose, and it will disappear by itself. His philosophy, which was very Christian, which was turn the other cheek, was very much that if we fight back, they will fight harder because they'll have reason to fight. And they being the racists, they being the government pushing for segregation and non-integration. So he was like, if we fight back, they will have something to fight. Hence why he was such a proponent of active nonviolence, because eventually he believed, and he said, they will wear down. They will be the ones expending all the energy and getting nothing tangible, nothing emotional out of us. And so when that happens, he said their government organizations will be forced to turn to us and say, what do you want? What can we give you? And his response was, we just want brotherhood. We just want peace. And so, Moji is one of the first to kind of state this on this philosophical level. And of course, Christ takes it to a whole level. So Moji saw the Zhao dynasty as elitist, and the rituals of the Li he viewed as a waste of effort. And these were kind of ornate and often very expensive, time-consuming practices of spirituality. Ones that he said that if all of the poor practiced these elaborate rites and sacrifices, the economy would fall apart, simply because they wouldn't have enough time to actually work, to actually farm, to actually harvest, to create, so on and so forth, because everybody spends so much time. So it's looking at these elitist rituals that the dynasty, that the government leadership was practicing, those very ornate practices of spirituality. He was like, I'm just wasting time. He's like, it doesn't serve society to practice these. It doesn't serve society, and it doesn't serve the dynastic leadership either. So I said it was very wasteful and not helping people on earth. The Maoists, therefore, put forth a concept that became important in early Chinese philosophy. This was known as Fa, a model of behavioral standards based on the old sage kings. These they compared to instruments used in the world, such as a compass or a ruler that craftsmen used to guide their work. So Moji was one important development, by the Moists, was a move away from the traditional style of analytics, which is writing, the Taoist writing, that being fuzzy and not logical. I mean, in that these can kind of confusing, obviously, which is sort of their intention, but it's like kind of poetic confusion. So they moved away from that and instead argued their points logically and systematically. So directly, just flatly saying bad is bad, and good is good. And not saying, well, let's take, there was one that was, when people see some things as good, other things become bad, they're just like, no, that's bad, good is good, just kind of straightforward, so to speak. All right, then Yanji. So Yanji or Yanju was an early Taoist teacher who identified naturalism as the best means of preserving life in a decadent and turbulent world. He may have been irrational, excuse me, he may be said to have been a rational hedonist, living by the most selfish of all these creeds, every man for himself. The Yangists challenged the Confucians and Taoists and rejected the traditional ritual order. The old rituals said that a person's life was not his own, very sacrificial. But Yangists argued that one must preserve one's own life above all and do only that which came naturally. All beings have a survival instinct. Animals rely on their strength, but man should rely on his intelligence. To use his strength against others would be despicable. Public life was external, and in particular public life, it was external and ought to be considered mainly in terms of its risks. It is never secure. Think of your political opponents, potential would-be assassins, and when it becomes clearly dangerous to seek political office, one has a duty to protect one's own life by leading a humble, private life and to refuse to put one's own or another's life at risk by running. Zhuangzi. We're going to have to fly through these. Zhuangzi was a Yangist and hermit associated with the Taoist Qiuji. The two appear as friendly rivals in a Zhuangzi, an anthology of texts dating from between 4 and 200 BC. The first 7 chapters of these texts consists of stories, anecdotes, and parables, often called the inner chapters of this book, that question conventional wisdom, but asking whether reason and logic is of much value in trying to understand the Tao. Does anybody ever sit and dream of butterflies? So I'm the only one? Okay. All right. Good to know. Zhuangzi taught that enlightenment came from the realization that everything is one and the Tao is limitless, and words cannot describe it. He said that words are like a fish net. Once the meaning is caught, one should forget the words, just as the net is only useful for catching fish, but can be put aside once the fish has been caught. He thought simply that the world was in flux and that we must learn to adapt. When Zhuangzi was about to die, his disciples signified their wish to give him a grand burial, contemplating that his burial is underground. He said, I shall have, and so now he's speaking of the grand aspect, but regardless, burial underground. He said, quote, I shall have heaven and earth for my coffin and its shell, the sun and moon for my 2 round symbols of jade, the stars and constellations for my pearls and jewels. Will not the provisions for my interment be complete? What would you add to them? The disciples replied, we are afraid that the crows and kites will eat our master. Zhuangzi replied, above the crows and kites will eat me. Below the mole crickets and ants will eat me. To take from those and give to these would only show your partiality. So he's finally saying, listen, somebody's going to eat you. And my decomposing body will feed life. But by you deciding to place me somewhere over another, you are simply, my body will be eaten and will disappear. You are simply choosing the winners of those who will get the sustenance and those of my body and those who will not. Menki. Okay, I'll try to be done in 5 minutes. Menki, known as Mencius in the West, was born only about 18 miles from Confucius' birthplace. is probably best known for the view that human nature is innately good. Mencius thought that the senses could lead people astray because the senses operate automatically. He saw it as his duty to combat misguided teachings such as Moism and Yangism, as they, the teachings, could do the same. In other words, you could kind of intellectually recognize good versus bad, and recognize if you should or should not do something, but your senses can lead you astray. You might know, I shouldn't eat that cake, but it smells so good, and therefore your sense of smell makes you, or kind of entice you to eat that cake, and now you ruin your diet kind of thing, or you ruin dinner. So what Mencius was saying is that he saw that, where was it? He saw that Moism and Yangism could lead people astray the same as the senses can, so that they are not taking people down the correct path towards the Tao, when they follow Moism and Yangism. So Mencius was a Confucian who had an ambition to serve a government, but was never able to do so successfully. He finally gave up and resolved to write a book about his recommendations to rulers who otherwise wanted nothing to do with it. The main text attributed to Mencius, the Meiji, was probably, though, compiled by his disciples and later edited by others. However, he emphasized 4 ethical attributes: ren, or benevolence, in particular benevolence to your people; li, observance or rights; he, propriety; ji, wisdom. Mencius perpetuated the concept of the transformative power of a person that Confucius had previously stated, that cultivating himself became a Zhongji, a fully mature person. He saw this concept as a natural basis for government. The ruler must fully evolve and practice ren to retain the loyalty of the people. Zhongji was a Confucian synthesizer who thought that all disparate schools of thought each had something to offer. Like Mencius, Zhongji believed that good governance could only arise around a fully realized person. He was repulsed by materialism and raw ambition that defined the age. He really hate America today. Zhongji experienced firsthand the effects of applying the legalist system on a statewide level. It's legalist last, which is next. While visiting the state of Qin, Zhongji was impressed with how well Qin was functioning, the government on an efficient level. This fact challenged his belief that true government could only be based on the ren of a just ruler. Nevertheless, Zhongji never lost faith in that vision. He learned from the legalists that people needed guidelines to be able to reform. Zhongji held the view that knowledge depended on mastery of Fa, and he writes in book 8, quote, "The way or the Tao is not the way of heaven, and it's not the way of earth. It is the way of guiding people. It is what gentlemen use as their way." So now he's departing from Confucius, in that, again, remember, Confucius believed that kind of heaven was speaking through him. So he's departing from Confucius going, no, it's really a set of rules, but they're kind of man-made rules that must be followed. And that is what he gets from the legalists, who we'll discuss, this is one slide on the gun, who look at things in a very, very dark way. Legalism, which was in direct opposition to Zhongji's worldview, also emerged during the Warring States period. Some rulers turned their back on Tao, relying instead on advisors from the emerging merchant class and from a new school of thought, that of the school of legalism. This school originated with political scientists known as the men of method. They believed, and this is the important part right here, they believed that law and order was paramount. Law and order was paramount in creating a well-functioning and efficient state, since people could only be dissuaded from acting selfishly if they were controlled. Once law and order was established, correctly implemented, and backed by a harsh penal code, a just, prosperous, and contented society would prevail. This is essentially what China is based on today. This is communism. this is totalitarianism, this is dictatorship, this is control. And this was legalism. And so this idea, I shouldn't say communism specifically, because communism is an economic idea, not a kind of philosophical governmental idea, but regardless, communism is always done through control. But this is now China, right here is this kind of legalist idea. This is totalitarian politics at its worst. All right, can I just take 10 minutes? I'm going to take it really quickly because I'm doing a new system. While you're putting that away, we'll just take it 1 second. Where are you guys? Well, okay, for you guys, I have to go to the point. I printed rosters to make it go as fast as I could. It doesn't look like it's your class. I don't know how that happened. So I'll still do this as quickly as I can. Luckily, you guys are a small class. So, Alvin, Amy, Caleb, Dara, Emma, Erica, Faith, Garrett, Jack,
Here.
Jake, Joanna, Justin,
Here.
Kiona, Madison, Matt Dillon, Matt Boykin, Matt Diamond,
Here.
Nathan, Noah,
Here.
Oscar, Simon,
Here.
Sydney, Tara, Taylor. Taylor, did I miss anybody? This class is small, if I can sort that fast. All right, well, I love you all. Have a great weekend. I'll see you. Don't forget, Tuesday, the video lecture, get your points. We're running out of points with which to play with. And I'll see you on Thursday. Peace.